Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 32, The Most Unlikely Truth is the Truth. Sitting there, watching Komaeda Nagito casually win 11 games in a row, then reading through his records and data, everyone here, surprisingly, adapted well to this kind of claim. They only muttered a bit under their breath and didn't question the authenticity of those words at all. A few suspicions rose in Mori Ogai's mind. This kind of luck seemed to surpass common sense, even mocking probability itself. Thinking about Dazai's interest in him, could it be some rare ability? Don't look as if the Port Mafia has many ability users. In fact, according to investigations, ability users are extremely rare, and ordinary people may not even see one in their entire lives. However, it seems like ability users attract other ability users. If you are an ability user yourself, you will unconsciously encounter other ability users. Sometimes, Mori Ogai even wonders whether there are truly many ability users in this world, or if it's just an illusion. Therefore, right now, Mori Ogai is making the same mistake as Ozaki Koyo did in the beginning, thinking that Komaeda Nagito's situation must certainly be that of an ability user. Moreover, he starts calculating whether or not this type of ability could be recruited for his own use. Up until now, Mori Ogai has only been contemplating Komaeda Nagito from a normal perspective, but knowing what he's thinking, Ozaki Koyo hesitating to speak as she watches him, deciding to quickly find a chance to tell him the unfortunate news. He's not an ability user. His luck is impossible for you to control. The Yodo old man was actually quite interested in Komaeda Nagito, seemingly having forgotten that today's guest was supposed to be the Port Mafia, and instead dragged Komaeda Nagito into a conversation that wouldn't let him go. Spare me, my ideals really don't align with yours. I've even been suggesting that you change the name of the Ship of Hope to something like Dream Vessel, which would feel much more accurate. Komaeda Nagito, not at all afraid of the chairman of the Tei Corporation, sighed and said, "Lightweight despair can't possibly give birth to hope, but you call this ship the Ship of Hope, it's practically a joke. I recommend changing your entire plan moving forward." The deputy leader and the men in sunglasses wiped cold sweat from their brows as they looked at Komaeda Nagito. Although their passionate efforts were being denied, deep down, they couldn't help but admire him from another perspective. Clearly, the honorifics used seemed perfectly fine at first, but there was a subtle tone of mockery. To dare speak to the chairman like that, this boy is, in a certain way, quite the badass. The most badass part is that the chairman didn't even get mad. The Yodo old man laughed, ha ha ha, with a pleased expression. Actually, this old man also kind of dislikes this restricted rock paper scissors. Next time, let's change it to an even more interesting plan. By then, you won't need to negotiate conditions to come anymore, just give me a call, that's enough. The deputy leader hurriedly took out a business card, bowed slightly, and handed it to Komaeda Nagito with both hands. Everyone from the Tei Corporation was utterly confused. Why? Chairman. Why can't you be as kind to us? Whatever he says, you just accept it. Komaeda Nagito retrieved his business card, but said, "I probably won't come again after this." The Yodo old man unexpectedly raised an eyebrow. "Next time might just meet your requirements." This old man just thought of a good idea. Everyone up hundreds of meters in the sky, stepping from one tall building to another, only able to balance on narrow beams of steel. If they fail, they'll fall to their deaths. This level of danger is sure to push them to perform at their limits, right? Simple, crude, and boring. Komaeda Nagito smiled in a highly formulaic manner as he commented, "Something I refuse." The Yodo old man. He, kids these days are really unpredictable. At this moment, someone finally reminded them that according to the plan, they were about to reach the port of Yokohama. When the Yodo old man heard the key word, Yokohama, he finally recalled the initial objective. Mori Ogai, who had been ignored for quite a while, remained calm. This Yodo old man, just now while talking, started drooling, looking as if he was about to fall into elderly senility, forgetting this kind of thing is very normal. Although he was teased by Komai de Nagi-to earlier, after hearing a series of incredible experiences, the Yodo old man's mood surprisingly wasn't bad at all. He glanced at the people from the Port Mafia, thought for a moment, and said, "Ah, thanks to all of you for looking after this child. Today, this old man is truly delighted." Let's go with what was mentioned earlier. For the Port Mafia who thought they would have to deal with another round of negotiations, this could be considered an unexpected delight. Mori Ogai immediately got into work mode, starting a chat with Chairman Yodo. Dazai Osamu, naturally lazy as always, sidled up next to Komai de Nagi-to and asked, "Heading back to Yokohama together tonight?" Komai de Nagi-to nodded, his expression looking a bit lazy and careless. "It feels like a whole night wasted. Quite unfortunate, ah." He sighed, but being able to see Dazai-kun's boss wasn't too bad after all, so dazzling, ah, no wonder he can become the Port Mafia boss. Dazai Osamu. He realized that he had somehow gotten used to Komai de Nagi-to's habit of praising at every turn. "Speaking of Boss Mori. Komai de-kun," Dazai Osamu said, "I'll give your information to the boss in a bit." "Ah. Is Boss Mori interested in me?" Komai de Nagi-to had a look of surprise. "Other than being a little lucky, I'm quite normal, ah." Dazai Osamu chuckled softly, "Even though you say that, Boss Mori doesn't think the same way, ah. If he invites you to join the Port Mafia, would you accept?" Komai de Nagi-to shook his head. "Please help me decline, Dazai-kun." "You're really not going to agree?" Dazai Osamu said with great interest, "If it's the Port Mafia over here, then they often gamble with their lives. The Tei Corporation's concerns don't mean much to us. Wouldn't this kind of situation make it easier to find the hope you're looking for? Because if it become a daily thing, then it won't become despair, ah." Komai de Nagi-to naturally replied, "Moreover, I want to seek hope, the absolute best thing. If I've never really considered pursuing this, even if I fall deep into despair, I wouldn't think of hope. From this perspective, the Port Mafia as a whole doesn't meet my requirements. I just need to associate with a few individuals who do." Dazai Osamu looked at Komai de Nagi-to for a few seconds, then suddenly lowered his head and whispered in his ear, "Do you think I can find what I'm looking for in the Port Mafia?" Dazai-kun is looking for the meaning of survival, right? Komai de Nagi-to recalled a few bits of information from their previous conversations. "I remember, Dazai-kun is trying to approach death to find the answer, isn't that right?" Dazai Osamu used a tone that concealed his true feelings and grumbled like he was sulking. "It's been 2 years, and I still haven't found it. Lately, I've been wondering whether I should keep searching or change my method. Komai de-kun, what do you think is the meaning of existence?" His voice grew quieter as he spoke, clearly aware that his thoughts were somewhat dangerous to express in front of the Port Mafia. Honestly, it would have been best to keep them to himself rather than sharing them with someone he wasn't even familiar with, especially since Boss Mori was just a short distance away, and even a slightly louder voice could be overheard. But seeing Komai de Nagi-to so resolutely say that he didn't need to join the Port Mafia, that the Port Mafia couldn't give him what he wanted, he couldn't help but feel a little resentful. Dazai Osamu's intuition told him that Komai de Nagi-to might say something unexpected, just like when he responded to Oda Saku's letters, often slipping in things that Oda Saku described as very similar to Dazai, or Dazai should take a look at this, something along those lines. Komai de Nagi-to fell into thought. "This question is quite hard to answer, ah." Komai de Nagi-to's words sounded like he was questioning himself for the answer, but in reality, what he truly thought was, with literature so lacking in this world, the fact that Dazai-kun could still be so fixated on such a tangled question, could it be that he would later become a philosopher? Dazai Osamu didn't actually expect to get a real answer. Sometimes, it's just a sudden urge to speak one's mind, and once it's said, the feeling passes. So, he returned to his normal volume and casually remarked, "I was just saying whatever. Killing some time, you know. We still have to wait a bit before reaching Yokohama." Komai de Nagi-to thought for a moment, then asked, "Dazai-kun, have you ever heard of Natsume Soseki?" Upon hearing this name, Mori Ogai, who had been chatting with the Yodo old man, almost couldn't control himself and gave Komai de Nagito a glance. The Yodo old man followed his gaze and misunderstood Mori Ogai's intention. "Oh, I almost forgot, this kid is an outsider. Have your kid take him to the deck for a walk. We're about to dock, and the night view isn't bad." Mori Ogai certainly didn't mean that. However, in this situation, he was genuinely interested in hearing what the boy had to say next after hearing his teacher's name. But after thinking it over, Komai de Nagito probably didn't mean the legendary strongest ability user, Natsume Soseki, but rather his teacher's identity as a writer who had published some literary works. No matter what Mori Ogai thought, Dazai Osamu was more than happy and agreed without hesitation. "Alright, then I'll go take a walk outside with Komai de-kun. See you in a bit, boss." Mori Ogai. "Dazai-kun, if you call me boss, can't you treat me as sincerely and considerately as those men in black suits and sunglasses treat their chairman? You should really learn from them." However, after Dazai Osamu said that, he left the room with Komai de Nagito, without even glancing at Mori Ogai. Ozaki Koyo, standing beside Mori Ogai, sighed and said, "Dazai-kun now looks just like a child. He's always been a child." Mori Ogai, after speaking, was a little stunned himself, then laughed and shook his head. "Chairman Yodo, let's continue." After leaving the VIP room, Dazai Osamu truly brought Komai de Nagito to the upper deck. The night sea gave off a mysterious feeling. Aside from the ship's lights illuminating the surface of the water, the distant area seemed like a different world, where neither the noise nor the brightness could reach. Dazai Osamu leaned against the ship's railing, lowered his head, and looked down at the swaying surface of the sea reflecting colorful light. Suddenly, he spoke. "Feels like dying in the sea wouldn't be too bad, Jumping into the sea? I wouldn't quite recommend that," Komai de Nagito casually continued, "because you might get swept into the whirlpool near the ship. Even if you avoid the propeller, you could end up smashing your head open, and before drowning, perhaps a shark would come along and take a bite." Dazai Osamu shivered at the thought, his face full of disgust as he said, "Oh wow, I really don't want that. I'm very afraid of pain." "Then let's change the method," Komai de Nagito suggested, seemingly unaware of how inappropriate his idea was for the topic at hand. He thought he was helping Dazai Osamu. "I'll help you keep an eye out as well." Dazai Osamu looked genuinely pleased. "Thanks. By the way, do you know the phrase, 'one head smashes to death on tofu'? I'm thinking of trying to see if I can smash myself to death with tofu." Komai de Nagito immediately clapped his hands for him. "Quite clever. So next, are you planning to study particle science?" Dazai Osamu paused for a moment. "How do you even do that, Komai de-kun?" Being able to casually say something with a hint of sarcasm. "No, before that, I figured I'd at least try some basic cooking." Dazai Osamu forced himself to continue, which for him was a rare occurrence, but when facing Komai de Nagito, Dazai Osamu found himself often at a loss for words. Komai de Nagito revealed a bright smile. "Dazai-kun is going to cook. That's really something to look forward to. Speaking of which, Amuro-san's cooking is especially amazing. I had it once, and it's not much worse than a Michelin chef." "Oh." Dazai Osamu mused, "That Amuro-san, huh? I see. After he's finished with his own matters, I'll go seek some advice from him." When Dazai Osamu spoke, he emphasized the key words, "Komai de-kun, you won't stop me again this time, right?" Komai de Nagito smiled wryly and waved his hand. How could it be? Dazai Osamu, satisfied enough, turned around, leaned his back against the railing, feeling the sea breeze as he said, "By the way, about the question just now. I heard Oda Saku mention it, Natsume Soseki, he's a author, right?" Komai de Nagito sighed slightly. "He's truly an amazing author." At the time when all the great literary figures were changing professions, seeing such a familiar name appear in bookstores, how deeply moving it was. It truly feels like crossing two worlds of hope. Then, does this author have something special about him? Dazai Osamu asked curiously. Komaeda Nagito responded, I just feel that some of the content in his books might serve as a reference for Dazai-kun. He considered himself insignificant, unqualified to point fingers at Dazai-kun's way of survival and goals, so as someone who reads many books, Komaeda Nagito had been pondering from the start if any of these famous quotes filled with hope would be suitable to answer Dazai Osamu. Sigh, Dazai-kun, living in this world is too tragic. There's no one he can talk to about this subject. None of the literary authors write books anymore, so no wonder Dazai-kun feels so lonely, only left to ponder by himself. Thus, after one round of elimination, Komaeda Nagito settled on Natsume Soseki. Dazai Osamu asked, what did he write? Humans are not born for some specific purpose. If they were, it would be equivalent to stripping them of their freedom and turning them into slaves of meaning. Therefore, personal purpose must be established by oneself. Something like that, I can't quite remember the exact words. After speaking, Komaeda Nagito, in a relaxed tone, said, so, not having a goal isn't a big deal, right? On the contrary, it shows that you're free. Doesn't that actually feel not too bad? But tracing back to it, Dazai-kun, you're extremely dazzling, and I really support you continuing on. If one day you find the meaning of survival, please be sure to let me know. As Komaeda Nagito rambled on, Dazai Osamu maintained an eerie silence. After a long while, even Komaeda Nagito stopped himself, only for Dazai to suddenly burst into laughter. Is that so? His tone carried a hint of complaint mixed with delight. Even though one problem is solved, there's still another one I have to figure out on my own. Komaeda Nagito, imitating Dazai Osamu's posture, leaned against the railing. Did it help Dazai-kun? Yeah, I'll go buy all of Natsume Soseki's books and take a look later. When Oda Saku recommended them before, I should have read them. Dazai Osamu lifted his head, gazing intently at the dim starry sky, then turned to look at Komaeda Nagito standing beside him. But I feel like my thoughts aren't wrong. Next, as expected, I should continue to taste and closely observe death. Komaeda Nagito softly replied, do your best, Dazai-kun. Dazai Osamu slightly smiled. Pursuing death to find an answer for himself and pursuing the hope that will never leave him, Komaeda-kun, they should have been like two parallel lines, never intersecting, yet now they miraculously crossed paths. Should this bond be maintained? Dazai Osamu closed his eyes, as if sinking into the deep sea, his heart peaceful and serene. The Hope cruise ship stopped in Yokohama, with the port mafia finally reaching an agreement with the Tei Corporation, along with Komaeda Nagito planning to return back to his Yokohama home, disembark the ship together. At the port, Nakahara Chuya and other members of the port mafia, who were there to welcome everyone back, wore puzzled expressions as they stared at Komaeda Nagito, who clearly should not have been there. Hey, blue mackerel. After meeting with the boss, Nakahara Chuya lowered his voice and asked Dazai Osamu, what's up with this guy? Didn't you say he was just an ordinary person? Although Nakahara Chuya didn't personally witness Komaeda transforming back into human form, he still decided to check the surveillance, just to confirm the other party's appearance. After all, even if Dazai Osamu agreed, it's still better to be a bit cautious about who comes to the port mafia. Moreover, he was indeed a little curious about how the person he'd been petting like a cat for half the day actually looked. This might affect whether or not he'd have nightmares at night. After remembering Komaeda Nagito's appearance through the surveillance video, Nakahara Chuya felt more at ease than before. Then, upon hearing Koyone-san say that she had looked through the information and confirmed that he was an ordinary person, he just tossed Komaeda Nagito's situation to the back of his mind. But the problem is, wasn't he supposed to be an ordinary person? He thought he wouldn't encounter him again. He had worked so hard to forget that psychological shadow. And now it's back. This time, it has nothing to do with me, you know. Komaeda-kun is someone the Tei Corporation's chairman appreciates, Dazai Osamu casually replied. Nakahara Chuya looked at Komaeda Nagito with suspicion. It wasn't that he was overthinking, just that, could a normal person really be valued by both Dazai Osamu and the chairman of the Tei Corporation? Could there be some kind of conspiracy, with all the information being fake, and in truth, he were trying to use Dazai Osamu to gain something from the port mafia? Stop letting your brain run wild. Seeing Nakahara Chuya's increasingly strange expression, Dazai Osamu couldn't help but interrupt his thoughts. Komaeda-kun isn't what you think. Komaeda Nagito seemed completely unfazed by Nakahara Chuya's unfriendly gaze, smiling and greeting him. Nakahara-san, long time no see. It's such a pity we couldn't properly chat last time. I didn't expect to meet again in a situation like this. Although it's a bit unfortunate that I couldn't find what I wanted to see on the ship, other than that, everything's really lucky. Hello. Nakahara Chuya wasn't too good at dealing with this kind of person. It was clear his own attitude wasn't great, yet the other person could still be so friendly, making him feel embarrassed. And then he thought back to how he'd been constantly petting that guy. No. Don't keep thinking about it. Going any further was like staring into the abyss. Nakahara Chuya averted his gaze and asked, Dazai, are ordinary people this bold nowadays? Komaeda-kun is an exception. Dazai Osamu waved his hand dismissively. Alright, this has nothing to do with little shorty. You should head over to Koyone-san's place. Nakahara Chuya rolled his eyes. Considering that Boss Mori also left the ship along with this Komaeda Nagito, it would be more reassuring if he went to Koyone-san to confirm the boss's intentions. So, without saying anything, he left. At that moment, one of Ozaki Koyo's subordinates was handing her a folder. While on the ship, knowing that Mori Ogai would definitely want to review Komaeda Nagito's detailed information once he had some free time, Ozaki Koyo had already contacted her subordinates, instructing them to bring the documents to the port. That way, if Mori Ogai requested the documents immediately, they could be delivered right away. If not necessary, preparing in advance won't be a problem, especially since these documents were already prepared, so it's easy to bring them over. No effort is wasted. After being sent over by Dazai Osamu, Nakahara Chuya asked, Koyone-san, what's the deal with that Komaeda? Ozaki Koyo, without saying a word, opened the folder, first taking out a copy and handing it to Mori Ogai, who had already sat in the car but hadn't closed the door yet. Then, there were 2 spare copies inside, one of which she gave to Nakahara Chuya. Actually, it's really just a coincidence, he was just there to watch the event. If you're still worried, here is his information. Mori Ogai sat in the car, while a little blonde girl angrily said to him, Rin Taro, you big idiot. You went out to play and didn't take me. Elise, I was just worried whether that Tei chairman has any special hobbies. You see, I need to protect such an adorable Elise. Mori Ogai instantly shifted into a different mode, as if this Elise wasn't someone he had just conjured up. Alright, let's go back and I'll take you shopping for a new dress. Watching this scene unfold, Nakahara Chuya had a subtle expression on his face. Although he was their boss, in this aspect, even Nakahara Chuya, who was very loyal, couldn't find the words to help him out. In his heart, he couldn't help but complain, isn't the one least qualified to say something like that you, boss? Ozaki Koyo also got into the car and then closed the door. This was a privilege the boss exclusive give to Ozaki Koyo. Everyone else, even Dazai Osamu, could only ride in a different car back to headquarters. After calming Elise, Mori Ogai opened up the stack of documents, quickly skimming through them as fast as the wind. After glancing at 2 or 3 pages, his eyes lit up. Koyo, I feel like there's something Dazai-kun mentioned that needs to be added. Ozaki Koyo used her kimono sleeve to cover half her face. Dazai-kun said Komaeda-kun doesn't have an ability. Mori Ogai. Ha! Are you serious? Look at this document and repeat what you just said. Chapter 32 End. Author's note. Congratulations on the ship successfully reaching the shore. Natsume Sensei was suddenly cued in this chapter, wait a minute, I didn't write this kind of dialogue. Yes, the writer is indeed Natsume Soseki from Earth. Komaeda, Dazaikuan might become a philosopher in the future. Oda Saku, that's not a bad profession. Dazai. Mori, it doesn't matter if it's not an ability, I won't give up easily.